From the Pep Radio Newsroom, this is the story we are covering at this hour. Oral arguments for the gender-affirming healthcare case from Tennessee were held today at the U.S. Supreme Court. As a follow-up to a line of questioning from Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson considered an example to show how denying trans people medical care is discriminatory, as this same care is often granted to cisgender individuals. Jackson makes a comparison between discriminatory policies implemented in the 1950s and 1960s based on race, bringing up Loving v. Virginia, which overturned bans on interracial marriage. U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogor echoed this argument, drawing parallels between the logic given in Loving and in the current argument. Shortly after this, Chase Strangio, the first openly trans lawyer to speak in front of the Supreme Court, began arguing in favor of overturning Tennessee Senate Bill 1. Strangio is with the American Civil Liberties Union and has previously presented in representation of the plaintiffs. Justice Clarence Thomas asks Strangio what his proposed solution would be, to which he responds that he would want to allow gender-affirming care for minors to be authorized, especially for his plaintiffs. A few minutes later, Justice Samuel Alito asked ACL lawyer Chase Strangio whether gender identity is immutable, citing detransitioners and gender fluidity as reasons to suggest that it is not. Strangio points out that there is strong evidence that the underlying basis of gender is strongly immutable, and that despite individuals' conceptions of their gender identities changing, what remains underneath is not something that can be willingly changed. The only thing that needs to remain immutable, he says, is that their gender is different from how their birth sex was assigned. Alito then compares trans people to those with schizophrenia, arguing how there can be different treatments. Strangio points out that these are fundamentally different issues and that regardless of any divergence from a typical understanding of how trans people exist, one's status as a trans person is immutable and does not shift in a way that can easily be compared to mental illnesses. A little later, Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked how Tennessee Solicitor General Matthew Rice's claims protect the public, pointing out that when you're 1% of the population, it's very hard to see how the democratic process will protect you. The decision of the court has the potential to also influence gender-affirming care for adults with their ruling, if they accept Tennessee's logic about the possible medical risks. That reasoning could be used in further arguments to restrict all forms of care. Justice Amy Coney Barrett asked how Rice's policies would apply to bathrooms or sports issues. He tried to argue that a transgender-based challenge is separate from a sex-based challenge. In other words, this case is about medical risks of transgender healthcare, whereas bathroom and sports arguments are about gender rights and equity. As such, Rice gave minimal rationale for how this argument may be structured. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asked how the gender-affirming care ban can even exist when it has so many parallels to racist laws of the past, pointing out that they're doing a similar thing, denying access to a public service based on personal characteristics. Rice tried to argue that gender-affirming care, like hormone replacement therapy and puberty blockers, are different medical treatments on the basis of why it's being asked for. That is to say, the use of both treatments are different based on whether they're being given to a cisgender or a transgender child. Jackson points out that the treatments are acting on the body in the same way and that Rice is contradicting his initial argument about the treatments being dangerous to minors when he goes on to argue that they have different effects on the body depending on your gender identity. Oral arguments in this case wrapped up around 12:40 this afternoon as the Supreme Court adjourned. No matter how the U.S. Supreme Court rules, folks within the transgender community in red states will continue to struggle with acquiring their medication until at least June, when the High Court is expected to rule on the case. By then, the Trump administration will be in power, and Congress will be considering bills that would outlaw gender-affirming care medications. Thus, stockpiling medication may be in your best interest. Please speak with your doctor and possibly attorney for your next best steps. For more information about the news stories we cover, check out the PEP Radio page on the Pennsylvania Equality Project website, paequality.com. Be sure to download the Live 365 app to take PEP Radio with you wherever you go. While on the PEP Radio page, be sure to click the donate button and leave a little bit or a lot. Every dollar helps us keep PEP Radio on the air. That's the news at this hour. Now back to more music on PEP Radio.